they really truly believe in their commitment to this, then pass it again and see what the judge does. You may get arrested, but if this is really what your commitment is,
go for it.
Go for it. You know?
Yeah, you think you're right?
Leader. You want to be a leader?
Let's
That'll
see.
lead. You'll get plenty of press on that. And
It is. It's overwhelming. All the nonsense that's going on in this community and around the country and around the world is overwhelming. But we're here to make it a little better. We're talking Racine. Right, George?
You got it.
All right.
Yep.
Jim?
Yep.
Yeah, the producer, the mastermind behind the illusion.
It's an illusion, right?
And I'm Dr. York, and you're... Why am I the host? Huh?
We
You're in
need
the
somebody delusional.
Yeah, I'm in the middle.
We need delusional.
Okay, people. First thing we're going to talk about today is the Circuit Court and the handling of the Racine Unified School District referendum that we had recently. It was in April already? My God, April
April
May,
7th,
June?
yeah, April
April
13th, they
June.
counted the ballots. April 7th
Yep.
was the election day.
close to 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And it's still not settled, but it seems to be getting
We
closer.
hope it's not.
Yeah, darn right.
Well, yeah, that's
why we
the
put
thing,
our
because
petition in.
it's in court. Yeah, there was a complaint filed, and well, Judge Piantek is the judge who's in charge of handling this case. And what is your opinion of how the case is being handled so far as a petitioner?
Well, as much as I kind of like the judge personally. Some of the things I see him as often in small claims, but my big problem is he didn't read our petition at all. I can't tell that he read it. I mean we have
Yeah.
evidence that he did not.
Well, the readings that I've done on what transpired in the case in the court. I didn't go to the court. You guys were
I
both
did.
there, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And like George says, it's obvious he didn't read it, and it seems as though he realizes that this case is probably going to go to the appellate court, regardless of who wins in circuit court.
Well,
So he's kind of like throwing up his arms and saying, I don't want to deal with this. I'll pick a winner, and then whoever is the loser will have to appeal it.
Well, we had
seems to be
one
the
of,
way
one,
he's
one of
handling
our
it.
attorneys' mother had died from the COVID, the virus.
Uh-huh.
So he had put in for a 2-day extension because he had to go to the funeral and take care of some things. And the court had approved the 2-day
Right.
extension.
The court and the defendants.
Yeah. And when I say the court, I'm normally all that stuff is under his signature. Well, he starts the hearing off, and he brings up this our answer, and he says it was 2 days delinquent. And he goes on and talks a little more. He comes back and he's hitting on his mind. And this thing is 2 days delinquent.
Well,
and I'm
I don't
trying
even know if I'm going to
consider
hear this case because of the delinquency.
it was that type of
petitioners.
attitude.
Yeah.
And finally, our attorney spoke up and said, "Your Honor, I put in a paper that said, you'd
It
approved
was approved
it."
by you.
Yeah, and it just went totally whoa.
Yeah.
Now how?
Never mind.
This
So he called it, that's a dead issue. That's a dead issue now. Yeah, what's a dead issue? Because you got caught, obviously not reading your even court records.
And the thing is, it's not like a page, one of our important pages of a brief, where it's buried in maybe
Right.
50, 100 pages. This is a separate document, all its own, a very separate piece of paper that he should have seen. So when he doesn't see something like that, it should be right on top of the stack too, because it's so frequent. I might say I don't think he read our whole page, and in fact, at the end he asked for a 2-page summary, so to speak. It was like a brief of each side.
And that was what was filed Friday.
That
right?
was Friday. Yeah. It was filed Friday, but it was requested on, what was that, Jim? Monday that we had
Yeah,
that
Monday
court hearing.
was
It was a
right.
Monday, right? So he wanted each side to submit a 2-page brief, and my cynical evaluation of that was he just didn't want to go through the 100 pages of brief that both sides had submitted. He just wanted to go through 2 pages. And
Well,
call
he
it
even
quits.
said, he held it up and said, this is a court case that has multiple pages, and, it's Father's Day, and I really, had to spend my Father's Day looking this over. Well, I can tell you right now, after I watched that court case, there is no way he read anything on Father's Day. Maybe he had a few beers on Father's Day. That would have been about the highlight of his day. Because I can tell you right now, when I went in there, thoroughly disgusted with that whole proceedings, because it was something where he talked about, this is just stuff you're throwing on the wall, mud on the wall, he called it.
Well, I think the bottom line is the numbers don't add up.
Well, the numbers don't add up.
The
If
numbers,
you read it, you'd
yeah.
understand that you guys want to recount. We're not going to even, it says in there, we don't want to recount.
Right.
I mean, is my
And,
going
by the way,
well, if-
and if you hear that word come out that the hot government wants a recount, that's a flat out lie. We want 12 wards, 12 little districts, voting districts looked at, and some of them are very small. It might be a couple hundred votes.
Yeah, look at it
Because
this
it's
way.
one ward.
There's approximately 50 packets of ballots, from different precincts, wards, all that, approximately
break it
50
down.
of them. Some of them got a substantial amount of votes. Several of them are pretty light, just a couple of hundred.
Right.
And you want to look at 11 or 12 of them.
Yeah, that's it. Just a small portion of them.
And just look at them.
Yeah, and we're not going to go through the whole recount procedure, which means you have to confirm that the sign-in sheets, that when you voted, is equivalent to the number of ballots cast. None of that stuff. We're just going to look at ballots, count them, and we want to look at all the ballots because we want to make sure one of them didn't disappear into the wrong envelope.
Because
of
the
something
numbers-
like that, because the numbers weren't adding up.
Yeah, the numbers as they were generated and reported during the recount don't match with the results they came up with.
Some of them, what it looks like is they took the sack out of the no ballot and put it into the yes ballot, and you just got it wrong that way.
I would
yeah.
say it was. I call
we
it
all
sloppy.
look at
It was a
simple
sloppy
stuff.
recount.
It's
Yeah.
going to be very simple.
So
But
it's
anyway,
the numbers.
we had.
No, it was very disappointing to me what went on there. I'm going to put it that way. But then along comes another citizen and wants to, as an intervener, a fellow by the name of Jim McLean, and he put in a marvelous brief on all this, what we've been talking about here, on how his desire to intervene, be recognized, and ask for the judge to recuse himself, which means come down
Step
from
aside.
the thing.
Yeah.
One of his reasons.
One of the reasons is really good, and this is right in the law, and it's simple for anybody to understand. The judge had connections with Racine Unified School District in his past, and without going into the detail of what they are, the point was when you have a connection like that, it is up to the judge at the beginning of the case, at the beginning of the hearing, to notify both sides that he has this connection, and either
make court
recuse
record.
himself or let them, where the two sides can decide.
Basically, he's asking them for permission to handle the
Permission
case.
to do it, right.
Yeah.
But that has to be by law revealed. And the judge did not do that. And that's a very simple thing. It's not question whether, had he revealed it, whether he needed to recuse himself. That's not the question. He didn't
Yeah.
even reveal it. And those are two great, big, different questions. And it's very clear that he had to do it, and he didn't.
Well,
So-
this is a $1 billion case. This is
Yeah.
a huge impact on this community
Yeah.
and on the education of the students.
Yeah.
I mean, there's unquestionable that this is enough money that it's going to have an effect on this community. And he just doesn't seem to care. He doesn't seem to get it. He just,
Well, I think he didn't read it, and he wants it over with, and he looks at Unified like, well, they got all kind of money, and it's powerful, and, you guys are, more of a troublemaker.
But what's really going to be
Almost like
interesting
that.
is
That's how I felt.
if this argument by Mr. McLean stands up, that would be a move towards getting someone in there who's interested in reading it, because that's what it is to ask him for recuse and vacate the order. Basically, is what it is,
Right.
and let's get somebody else in there. But that's enheartening. And when I look at this thing, and I don't know a lot about legal stuff, but I've been involved with enough legal stuff back in my day to know that this is good. This guy's got some good stuff
oh
in
yeah,
there.
he's got a very good argument.
Yeah.
He does it. There's a standard by which all of these documents they're held to a standard, and he meets all those standards. I mean, it's just picayune stuff like how big the margins got to be, what kind of font you use,
And
what
this is
size,
a
and
pro
it's-
se litigant,
yeah,
so
he's-
it's he's
got
on
his
his
act
own
together.
type of.
Yeah.
One of the things, though, George, the petitioners then sent in that two-page demand, that two-page motion or whatever. I
Or
guess
thing.
what do you call it?
Well, this was the response that the judge asked for.
Right.
Give me 2 pages
Two
by
pages.
Friday.
They cut it out to two. Take the 100 pages and make it 2 pages.
Yeah.
Okay, Judge.
Petitioners repeated demand to examine and recount ballots.
Now
That
this
what
is
you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now this
Yeah.
is interesting because it's Wisconsin State Statute 7.54. It proceeds. It states if there's a contested election, the petitioners, meaning you and the other, have an absolute right to see those ballots. If there's contested wards, as you're speaking of, you have an absolute right. It has to be done in open court, or it has to be done in a setting where possibly the clerk of that municipality would then have it, and you would be able to oversee and check those ballots to make sure that they were counted correctly, or envelopes were reviewed correctly.
Well, this whole process wasn't handled the way it should have been. I mean, talk about having the right to review those ballots. I mean, the petitioners that we're talking about, the people that are saying that, nah, we want to recount, and then saying, I don't think that you guys got the numbers right. You guys were not allowed anywhere near any of that material. And everybody else was. You know, I mean, there were people that worked for Unified who wandered in and out of the area that was marked off. They don't go beyond this tape line.
Yeah.
You couldn't.
Yeah, now here's
Other
what they
people
would
could.
what they would do. They would if we requested it at the right time, it's very key. They would put it on a little table and they roll it over to that line and we could look at it. All right.
Yeah.
But what we particularly wanted to look at was the ballots, particularly ballots, the envelopes that have been opened where the ballots have been used. We wanted to look at those particularly.
For the write-in vote.
Right.
Or the mail-in, I mean.
Yeah, from the
Mail-in or
absentee
absentee,
ballot.
yeah.
Right. But we couldn't do it. We couldn't just walk over to a table and say, "Okay, I want to look at the envelopes, please," because they would not interfere with their work to do that. They might be going through and counting a big stack of ballots, 100, 500,000, sometimes the stacks, and we couldn't just stop in the middle of that counting and say, "Well, let me see the envelopes." Now, I can understand that, and we understood that limitation. But at the same time, there was no way for us to be there except by just pure happenstance when they were looking at the ballots. One time I had one of the balloters, one of the tabulators come over from across the room, came over and got me and said, "George, we're looking at a certain type of ballot right now. Would you like to come over?" I said, "Yeah, just let me finish here in a minute and I'll be right over there." So it took me a little bit to finish what I was looking at one table. I ran over there and she showed me the ballots. But that was the circumstances, and that was just the ballots. What was the real key thing were the envelopes. That was the thing we really wanted to look at.
You know, one of the
It was
things
in fact, Dennis had been denied at one time. One of the other petitioners. He'd gotten it from one of the tabulators, but the other tabulator had the big stack, and he flat out refused to show it to him.
Now, when is the judge supposed to render a decision here? Based
Within
on,
10 days.
Within 10 days.
Yeah, starting on apparently Friday, 10 days from Friday. So, two things I want to kind of bring up. One is the judge is going to make the decision in writing. He's not going to open up the court again for anyone to go to or Zoom. So it's going to be in writing. So if he does, I don't know how he can get past the state statute that says you have an absolute right to view those ballots in a contested race such as this. I don't know how he gets past that. If he does, then it would have to go to appeals court. And I think, even my personal opinion, and I think the petitioners have a real good chance of winning an appeal if it is struck down in local court.
Well, I not only agree with that, Jim, but I don't think I think he's got a real time with this recusal too.
Well, he does.
That's very clear by judicial
I'll tell you,
procedures.
George, I sat there and looked at it too, and I'm like, wow, this is not a legitimate courtroom. When I just watched almost antics, and I didn't think that there was anything in there where he was not biased. I think he was biased, and I'm not sure he's going to recuse himself being that.
If he had brought it up beforehand, I'm not sure what my response would have been when I found he had those connections. But after watching him during the so-called hearing, I sure hope I would have objected to it because he obviously had a bias. But the hearing itself was strange, and then you could hardly hear what was going on. It was, I say, so-called hearing. Some of the things, particularly the opposing attorney, what he said, and he went on for about 5 minutes talking and talking. I just couldn't. I just gave up trying to stretch my ear up there or whatever to try.
Well, guess what? Guess what, people? The next topic of discussion is a court case.
I want to bring one last thing up on the
Okay.
Unified one. One of the things I've noticed about hot government, and I mean they are putting out everything on this case. As far as I mean, you even did a video which I shot for you on the
how, yeah, if you want to see how these counting goes.
yeah, and I can
like
actually
that,
add it to this show. But what I noticed was Unified. Usually you hear teachers say, I'm in favor of this, and you guys are wrong, and nothing. It's almost like dead silence, absolute silence.
Nothing coming
Unified.
from the teachers. What you're
Nothing
saying,
coming
Jim,
from the
in public,
tablators,
really.
anybody. And so what tells me is the attorneys have told them, don't say anything, don't go public with anything, because I really truly believe that they know that they're in a little bit of trouble. Don't talk.
They want to keep it quiet.
They want to keep it quiet because
don't create
public,
controversy in the paper,
Yeah.
because then people
because
start
in
looking.
public
The less
opinion,
conversation, the better.
you
for them.
counted the $1 billion ballots. So yeah, if I wanted to go out and start talking on social media or wherever, newspapers, about how this is wrong, that this petitioners are wrong in their numbers, and
They have
they're
nothing to gain by talking
and
about
they
it.
have nothing to gain because they were
Yeah.
the tabulators, the canvassers were employed by Unified. It only makes them look bad. PR or public relations is probably all over this. Keep your mouth shut, because anytime you walk in there, they're going to go after you, because how do you count your own ballots? That's
Yeah.
all I got to say.
Yeah. Particularly when
good statement.
it's more than just counting too. There's a lot of judgment calls. There were a lot of
Exactly.
things up on the screen. There were votes. It was not as simple as you might think on what you call counting ballots. It was more than going 1, 2, 3, 4. It was, do we count this one? Can we read that signature? Is this date right?
Well, counting is important, but making sure that you only have legitimate ballots to count is at least as important.
That's right.
And they got them both wrong.
Yeah. And they were judge and jury on those. Should we
Doesn't
count it?
matter who votes, it's who
Yeah.
counts the votes.
Yeah. Well, anyway, back,
All right.
back to
So
our second
let's go to the
case.
fun one. Yeah, that's not fun one.
What did we decide? This is the Wapner episode.
Yeah, it's all court.
It's all court all
court
day.
all day.
And we almost said that in unison.
Yeah, that's
Very
good.
good. And the second case we're talking about is the COVID shutdown, and the city's response to COVID is to shut down the community, basically. And
Well, the biggest problem too with that was not just it was shutting down the community, but one individual had the power to do that.
Exactly, yeah.
An unelected individual, and it was like virtually unlimited. In other words, there was no distinguishing, nothing in print that said how far she could go with her shutdown and how much she could charge for these fines, and just the whole procedure was arbitrary and capricious. Whatever she decided,
Yep,
that's what went.
exactly.
And that's not the way to make law, because, well, first off, it was just a mandate that the city came out with. Everybody stay home, don't do this, don't do that. Business is shut down, blah, blah, blah. And everybody was like, okay, well, let's step back, let's slow down, see what happens. Well, now people are getting antsy. Businesses are in danger of failing because of this loss of business that's going on. And so
One fitness center.
one guy
Yeah.
decided to
Getting in
bring
trouble.
suit and say, listen, I don't want to break the law, but I don't agree with the law. So let's, I want the court to take a look at this. And the court took a look at it and said, yeah, this is unconstitutional. I'm sorry, you can't enforce this, and you shouldn't have it this way. One person should not be empowered to do what you're giving Dottie Bower Socks. I said Power Socks.
No, it's sour
Should not be empowered to do the things that you're allowing her to do. And he made no value judgment whatsoever on any of the recommendations. He just said, you cannot give one person this much power. It's unconstitutional. So what did the city do in response to that? They come back and they say, well, we'll make it an ordinance.
Yeah.
They passed an ordinance. So they were working under a state statute at the time, so they passed an ordinance that did the same thing.
Well, so the judge's injunction, they thought they were going to,
They thought they'd circumvent it, do an end around.
circumvent,
Yeah.
move around. Now, hey, let's just take a second here. Now, let's talk about Corey Mason, and let's talk about, now we can get into the alderman that made statements on it, but I want to talk about a judge injunction here. Now, you're in front of a judge, and the judge said, okay, listen, you were caught drunk driving, and, before you go to court, and in this period of time that we're going to evaluate your court, we're going to have you go in and do a urine test every week at such and such a place. He says, you know what? as he leaves there, you know what, I'm not going to do the urine test. You know what, we're going to, writes a letter to the judge. You know what, Your Honor, I don't think I need to do that, and here's my reasons why. He doesn't go to a urine test, maybe 1 week, 2 weeks. What happens? The judge puts out a benchmark.
Yeah.
You bring him in front of me, because we're going to find out what the problem is here. So basically, this is what the city did to Judge Frederickson. Basically,
They didn't take their urine test.
they didn't take it. They should have.
Now everybody's pissed.
But here's the thing. How do you get... Now, he comes back, and in his... he comes back and says, oh, no. You're going to follow my injunction.
Yeah.
And he comes back and says, there is no strike 2 or 3. He gave him a pass. Because no strike 1. Well, strike 1 would have been bring them to me.
Yeah.
Well, he said that's strike 1, and there is no strike 2
Exactly,
or 3.
or 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So, but he's basically saying is, I could have dropped a hammer on you right away, and he didn't do it. So he did give the city a break, and then they come back and make these statements, so we can go on from there.
Oh yeah, I'm very, I'm offended by the way they responded to this judge. They try to make him out to be the bad guy. All he's doing is telling them that they have made a mistake. You guys handled this wrong, and you can't do it that way.
He used the law.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's rare. In fact, I have, in 50 years that I've been here now, and I get to court once in a while, a small claims court generally, but I've never heard a judge go this deep into constitutional theory and freedom and that type of thing, he even used the word despot in there. James Madison used the definition of tyranny, and they're talking about the same thing. In other words, where one person has all this power to make laws and enforce the laws and fine people and this type of stuff. But when they came back and just thought they would substitute it with an ordinance, that's extremely arrogant, of both. I'll tell you, who was behind it, of course, was our good buddy Scott Letney. I'm sure that he was helping Mason do his dirty work, and Dottie Bowersox was probably just loving it. But the point was that all these good intentions, which I challenge on, there were good reasons why she needed to be given that power. Some of these are pretty darn flimsy, and I think when this is all blown over, as we look back at maybe a couple of years from now, we're going to just see how flimsy they really were.
Well, this is the response
ridiculous.
by the city council and by the mayor, not the entire city council, but the ones here that we have quotes from. I find it really offensive. Corey Mason, the ruling is extremely troubling. Here's John Tate. A community has a right to protect itself against an epidemic of disease. Natalia Taft. I am disappointed in today's ruling. Decisions should be made regarding public health using scientific approach and the most up-to-date and accurate data. This is not about public policy in terms of what's good for the citizens, other than the fact that standing up for the Constitution and obeying the Constitution is good for the citizens, but he in no way said that any of the things that people are recommended to follow were in any way bad or flawed judgment or anything like that. He said the way you have handled this is unconstitutional. So
and I think that's a good point, Doc. In other words, they're saying, we needed to do this to protect our citizens. Well, I tell you what, though. The way the means do not the ends do not justify the means. Isn't that the old saying that you don't hear much anymore?
Yeah, right.
But that way it used to be. They are still bound by constitutional law, good law, to follow those laws that they're trying to make us follow. What I consider a lot of them are bad laws. But at any rate, they're avoiding good law and pursuing their goals. And when they don't understand that. Doggone it, guys.
Well, here's what I think
they do not believe in those positions of power.
They shouldn't be in these positions if they don't
No,
follow
they
it.
should
But
not
if they
be there.
really, truly believe in their commitment to this, then pass it again and see what the judge does. You may get arrested, but if this is really what your commitment is,
go for it.
go for it.
Yeah, you think
be
you're
a
right?
leader. You want to be a leader?
Let's
That'll
see.
lead. You'll get plenty of press on that, and your point will get put out there.
Well, in spite of some of the other things that Jason Meekma, former president of the council, said, in spite of some of the things that I don't necessarily agree with. He comes out with a statement, "It is my most sincere hope that the members of the community will take it upon themselves to continue to put health and safety first. Please wear masks in public, give people adequate space, and be sympathetic to the choices people are making to protect themselves."
That may
That's
or may
good.
not be good advice, but that's about
Well,
as far
no,
as
I
they
mean,
should have gone.
yeah, I mean,
You're perfectly welcome to give advice like that.
Absolutely.
You're perfectly welcome to carry on a campaign to get people to do this and put out signs on the street.
Advertise,
Face masks are important. Whatever you want to
Smoke,
put out
don't
there.
smoke. Remember the smoking? It was all about stop smoking. Well, it was
but when
smart.
you start closing down people's businesses, taking away their livelihoods, endangering their life by instituting this thing upon them.
And not even telling them what they're going to do if they violate this vague law.
Right. And you just do it arbitrarily. One person decides that that's the case for your business. Oh, this business is okay, but that business isn't. That's the thing that these people need to understand. This is America. This is not the Soviet Union. This is not a totalitarian state. You people are not despots, as the judge said. You're not supposed to be despotic. He said it was despotic to do this, and he was right on that. James Madison called it the very definition of tyranny. So, and people obviously are totally ignorant. These people in the city hall, these people Taft and Tate and Mason, Mi'kmaq, maybe not so bad, but along the same line, they just don't get it.
They're making it a fight.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they should be in agreement with the judge. Okay, we went about this the wrong way.
Yeah.
How many times you get
This
in
is
front of a
what we
judge
re-
and
this
say,
is what we
"Hey,
recommend."
Judge, I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong.
No, that's Doc, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. If they had just learned by this, learned from what the judge said, read what he said, and gone back to their constitutional studies,
which they swore an oath to.
which they swore an oath to uphold. Very good point. They would have seen that he was right and you made a mistake, and so don't try and cover it up with a ordinance that just made you look even worse, if that's possible.
Okay, now we're going to hit Sandy Widener. Figuratively.
Well, hold on a
We
second.
don't want to hit Sandy.
Not
We
hit on
like
her.
Sandy.
Well, we're going to hit their case.
Yeah, we're going to hit the case.
The third case of the day.
Yes. Which is
You're
now-
safe, Sandy.
I think so.
From us, anyway.
But that case is now in Kenosha.
Correct.
Yeah.
Racine said, whoops, hot potato.
Oh, yeah, hot potato's right. You got to remember, that judge that takes this case it came back from the appeals court now. Now, if you go back and we put some things out there as far as the timeline, but everybody can remember that went to appeals court after they sealed the court and all the other things that went on. And they sent back and said that case should not have been dismissed, that Gasker Gavage dismissed that case. It should not have been dismissed.
Should not have been sealed either.
And it should not have been sealed. So now it goes in front of I think it's Chad Kirkman in Kenosha, a judge in Kenosha, and that's going to happen on this Tuesday, tomorrow, 9 a.m. It's going to be on YouTube, a direct line to YouTube, and I'm going to put that on the screen here. And it's also going to be a Zoom where you could you take the meeting ID and the password and also log in on Zoom. So one thing Kenosha does is very open. The courts are very much open, and they do a great job. And I'm going to keep that on the screen here so you can tap into that court tomorrow.
And, well, that's interesting that how open they are, and what this is all about is closing things down.
Exactly.
Yeah, and another thing that's going to happen if this goes as we expect it should, is that contempt of court charge against Sandy Widener, it'll go away.
Exactly.
Because it should have never been sealed. So, and I'll say she didn't really reveal anything anyway that could have gotten her that contempt charge.
There's nothing in this. There's nothing
This thing
in
has
these
been
emails.
so mishandled from day one.
Well, it was a control thing.
Unfortunately, it was a judge that was being controlled by the city attorney who was giving some very bad information out, some very bad evaluations.
And he's usually such a stellar example of legalese.
Well,
Listen, George, when I saw Monday...
Now, this is two cases in a row.
Yeah. When I
the
saw
last one where
Monday-
the city was doing all this crazy stuff was from Latney, too.
No. You know what I see in the court now? I see these judges in the court. You've got Unified walking in there with their three-piece suits and they're coming in, and Your Honor, these are just a bunch of jokers that are throwing mud against the wall, spaghetti, I think they called it, and and of course the judge is like, well, we'll look this over, and we'll give you a fair shake, but it's already done, it's already baked in, The Unified's got the money, they've got the power, and they're going to do what they do. Sandy Widener comes into court, the city attorney walks in, what would the city attorney do? He'll do the right thing. So it's an easy. Judge Piantek, Judge Gaskargevich just rolls with it, doesn't look at the case, doesn't understand the case, doesn't even want to hear the case. They've already got their minds made up.
They're going with the power and the money. And
so when you get a Judge Fredrickson out there doing really becoming a judge, ho, 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 I expect some fireworks down the road. Are they going to, we'll have a show just on...
We got a live judge is the thing.
And I want to go through some of the old court cases that were handled through Racine and how they were handled and how they would be handled on with a different judge, say like Fredrickson. It went in and actually looked at it and ruled on law.
We're just going to go to bad cases, examples of things that were mishandled.
Well, Doc,
because that could be that's a monumental task.
These are maybe nationally bad cases where Racine has had. But anyway, we'll move on. But I just wanted to get that in there. I just have watched this, and I watched it a number of times on.
Another thing that was interesting between the case in Kenosha and the case in Racine, it was much more easily to observe in Kenosha, and you could get records of it. You could go back to YouTube or wherever you go and find out what the court said.
Watch it again.
What was going on. But with the one in Racine, it's gone.
That's honest, open, and transparent government right there.
And that goes up to the That's Jonathan Delagrave in on it.
Well, here's the thing. It's
$52.50.
$52.50. Your attorneys, and of course you guys paid for it, $52.50 to go to court, to go on Zoom.
That's amazing.
In Racine County. Not in Kenosha, not in Milwaukee, not in Walworth, but in Racine it's $52.50.
Just to go and make an appearance,
Just to make an appearance. Over and above your
our filing fees and all that type of stuff. That's right.
So
and all the taxes that we paid for these courtrooms and the judges' salaries.
And I got to tell you, in that courtroom with Piantek, the speakers on there were a joke. It was like
couldn't hear anything.
They were like little.
The computer speakers?
Yeah, it was nothing. It was maybe
it's like you were at the drive-in trying to listen to the dialogue in a movie, and your speaker didn't work for your car, but you
could hear it on the one next car next to it.
It was terrible.
That's kind of like a 101.
Really bad. It's embarrassing, really. To be honest with you, that whole court case on Monday was embarrassing, and I watched over and over. I've seen this, and it just after a while, you hope our system was better than this.
Yeah.
You really do.
A lot of people are getting upset. Hot Government is growing. That organization that Mac Platt organized, that's gaining members hand over fist.
Yeah.
People are getting tired of this crap.
Well, a government has spent so much time getting involved with business. They're wanting to build hotels, they want to build housing things, and want to do this and do that in the environment, in the economic sector. Just pay attention to what government's supposed to be doing, and one of them is a good judicial system, and quit worrying about this other stuff, and things will just start to take care of themselves.
Yeah, the
private sector can do a lot better than government a lot of these things.
They got this task force now to reform the police, which I think it's important to take a look at that. But at the same time, the whole judicial system needs to be examined because it's like an industry. Anyway, we'll get on that some other time. For today, we're going to say goodbye. And we'll see you next week. Thank you.